For Reaper Metal Productions, this is the Into the Darkness podcast, and I am very excited to welcome back Thomas. But then even more excited to welcome today's guest, and that is Peter from Vader. And one of the things that I was really looking forward to talking to you about is highlighting the fact that you're from Poland and then going way back to the start of Vader, because if you've been watching Reaper Metal Productions, you might have heard a few stories from my good friend Sebastian, who has told his story growing up in Poland and the metal scene, what it was like during the 80s and stuff, and while metal was rising, that there was a very different dynamic from then till now, and especially between countries, that it always kind of made me interested in the fact that here you are starting really an extreme metal band where metal was presumably harder to get in general. So when you're coming up with Vader and stuff like that, like, was there a different dynamic? Like, how were you getting into metal? Because as it was kind of described to me, like, there were people, they had to tape broadcasts, like you couldn't just easily get albums and stuff like that.
No, really. So actually, a few days ago I was watching that video about thrash metal birth. It was called Murder in the Front Row.
Oh yeah.
And actually what I was watching was just pretty much similar to what happened in Poland, but we started just a little bit later because we're still behind the Iron Curtain. And of course, there was no stores, no record stores, nor the music stores in Poland. So we had to use what we had, So if you wanted to start to run the band, so you had to be ready for handmade instruments, poor quality gear, or if you wanted to listen to anything, the only source of music was the national radio. Mm-hmm. So that was something like there were some guys that were just play the whole albums. It was not really legal, but nobody gave a fuck about that back then, because that was the only source. So we were behind the Iron Curtain, so who could do anything?
Right.
Nothing. But these guys were the only source for it. It was like Spotify today, free music.
Yeah.
Better than nothing. The original albums, everything was just way too expensive, for us. So if not radio, because that is, of course, not too many. So we had some friends around in Poland who had the families living outside in U.S., Canada, Germany, and they kept to just bring the stuff to Poland. And these happy guys, they were a source for rest, So we had to travel hours and hours to the west or to the east, to the friends, just to copy, to tape some demos or albums or whatever, just to have hours of new music to listen over when we get back home, So not easy, but the passion was so high, so nothing could stop us.
Right.
It was the life was so poor, and it was nothing was boring. So for us, being still teenagers, so that was a world that we escaped to. There was something interesting, and actually that made us stronger. So we are far from politics. We got enough of that. So we created the world of metal, which was something extra for us. That was just us, The friends, we can just gather together, listen to the music we love. We are looking different. We jackets, handmade patches, all the names of the bands was just written with pencil sometimes. Having a longer hair was not really good if you were in the school. But, that was a pain, but we could stand it, That was a sacrifice ourselves. And we had those longer hair. We were wearing those patches with pride, and even if that was really easy way to fight with somebody who was not that much into the music at all, so that was worth it, because that was a brotherhood. So for metal, everything.
Yeah.
So that was a passion, man. That was passion, huge passion. So maybe because everything was so hard to get, so people respected what they had. Today, everything is easy, everything else. So there's still, of course, diehard fans, but there is difference. There's just maybe because it's so easy to get everything you want.
Right.
It's a matter of time, That's it.
Yeah, because it's interesting too. Then because like I look at like the musicianship of Vader, like like Doc, for instance, like when you listen to those demos and stuff, it's like the speed is just it's organic, it's there. It's like I just find that interesting because if it's like very much passion based, of course, but like if things were so hard to get, it's almost like where are you even learning about this like techniques and stuff to even get better? Because it's like this is the innovation of this extreme music. It wasn't like now like you can get all these master classes or whatever to help you through it. So it's like I don't know. Is it just because he was locking himself in a room or?
No, nobody helped us through, so we had to help ourselves.
Right.
So. The only good thing was the system. They gave some place to rehearsal, and that was free because that was mandatory for each factory to have a place of culture. Let's call that in that name. And if you had in the band somebody who was a member in a factory or whatever, so these rooms were for free to use. And that was exactly like the beginning for Vader. When I met Spiggy and we started Vader a couple of months after we met. So he had a room, and that was like a paradise, So we had a room with some equipment and that. And of course, communism style equipment, which was, it was just speakers that work, nothing else. But better than nothing, and they had drums. I was piece of shit drums, but it was to have a drums, to own your drums, that was out of question. It was just not possible to have. That came later. So having this, it's perfect to start. And nobody was asking what are we gonna play, So even if what we played was a noise for all those people in Poland. So something like extreme metal. So that was us and. Fans like us who started that, something we called extreme underground sooner, and but nobody cared about that. So we just played. They had a few bands. They can show up, and sometimes the only thing we had to do, we need to show up for some authorities, some members, and then some like a summer meeting or whatever, and it was scary because we're using all these like metal uniforms with spikes, just black, or like outlines on like on the eyes with the chains, all these, like it was evil, and the screaming, playing noisy. So I remember one place that was like a place to relax for workers, and the place where we rented that room from. And they almost beat us after that because they didn't know what's going on. So it's like, oh, what the hell is that? We came here to relax. This sounds like a factory. Like it was like, but the first thing we did, we made some friends with those guys who are like a security. So nobody touches us.
Nice.
So that's first of all, and it worked. But we just played that, and the important thing was not what those people think about it, because so we play that music for different people, different kind of people.
Right.
But the important thing is just to have that place to rehearsal, and that we had to do that just to keep the room.
Right.
So. That was some realities which was different, than today. Because today you just pay for a room and that's it. But in the past, it was not that easy. So that was different.
Right. So I think a lot of people don't realize you guys are one of the longest running death metal acts, having started around 1983. if we kind of fast forward through that time, from other interviews we've heard or read, you started more like a traditional type heavy metal band and obviously progressed over time. And so if we kind of fast forward to the first demos like Necrolust and then Morbid Reich, who was even recording the bands in Poland? Was there like a Scott Burns type guy who was, who was like helpful, who wanted to help the scene, who wanted to help the scene and help bands like yourself?
We started already been kind of, let's say, speed metal band, because we wanted to be extreme as possible, but until Show No Mercy came up and until we heard that album. So we were focused more on bands like Motorhead, Saxon, Priest, Maiden, those kind of stuff. And we just played this kind of a little bit faster, just.
Right.
And then after Slayer came up, that was like, wow, it was like a revolution. Of course, in speed, first of all. So Vader just get like a huge kick in the ass, like in speed, like after that album came up, actually. What I know, it's not just Vader. It's like 90% of all those bands, like in Europe, sort of like that,
Right.
And so Slayer and Show No Mercy, and not even Kill 'Em All. Kill 'Em All, we did not like that much. It sounded too punky for us.
Okay.
But Show No Mercy, maybe Show No Mercy was a little bit more like Judas Priest played on 45,
right,
on a gramophone. That's faster, more evil.
I get what you mean, though, too. There is definitely a difference.
Yeah, and that's right. But recording the more official thing we recorded was kind of demo tape we had to send to Metal Mania Festival. That was the first big metal festival in Poland, very first one. It was in '86 in April, sorry. And a year before, we recorded just on a tape recorder in our rehearsal room, just live. We laying live and we just recorded that. So that was actually the only source to have something like decent quality just to send.
Right.
And we are accepted. That was actually extraordinary in those days, because we never expected that, But we just prepared pretty professional. Like in 80, it was just 85, so that was really the hot times.
Right.
But we make all this professional session with all these, spikes and shit. And the demo tape sounded pretty decent as well, It was not that bad, And all this info, booklets, that was looking pretty good. And maybe that was more important for those promoters and Katowice in that city than anything other, It was just, we're pretty extreme by then already. And and the next year we just came, we played, and that was actually the real beginning of Vader, when the Poland, still local, but Poland as a country could see us, and we actually became known after that performance.
Okay.
And usually that was like this, and the first demo tape we called a demo was recorded in '86 on one of those local shows in the pub in Olsztyn, in our city where we're like performing and we're rehearsaling. And that was just a friend of us. He recorded the whole show on a tape recorder, and sounded not really good, but we badly needed something we can call a demo tape, because that was the time when all this tape trading started to exist, and we had nothing. So even the live recording is still better than nothing. So I name it Live in Decay, and so we just take that, on a cassettes. Like, we are buying all these cheap cassettes from all these like a military orchestra. It was like a cheap to get. So we erased everything, we taped stuff, and it was spreading around, to the fans, the bands, around. And until '88, when Doc joined the band, and when we split, because me and Charlie, a singer, and a drummer before, so So that was not like a solid lineup, and so we quit. And in that time, Doc joined the band, as a drummer.
Yeah.
And I just started to sing in the band because I couldn't find any like a vocalist, the proper one, after the ex-singer just left. And all in all, we are just 3 guys. And for a bottle of vodka, so we were invited to a radio station and the local radio, or local broadcast, and Olsztyn. And there was every month there was something like new faces in music, the local faces, you know what I mean. And they didn't care about the style; they had to have something.
Right.
So if you gave them a gift like a vodka to those guys who were owner of that, broadcast, that was a deal. So you could take a part in that, which means you could record 2, 3, or 4 songs, and they use them after that because they use those songs for the broadcast, and then they just throw it away. And as a band, we could use it.
That's cool.
And nobody asked how they used it or any legal. It was just music. They used it. They gave us, and that's how Necrolist was recorded.
Oh wow!
And in the very same way, Morbid was recorded the year after.
Wow!
So actually, these tapes are important for us, and we recorded like in 2 days, I think, total. And before bottle of vodka, and that's how it was in Poland back then.
Wow.
And you talk about going through vocals and stuff, and it does seem like through those demos, even up to Ultimate Incantation, there's like definitely a change really between each recording vocally. So is it safe to say that there were definitely like new things that you were trying? Because even the one, like, it reminds me of like one of the scenes in that movie Independence Day where the aliens got the guy by the throat, where you have like those distant vocals and like just so cool. I think it's on it might be on Morbid Reich where it's got the
you know what, I didn't want to sing, and actually I was just put in that situation, and I had to.
Yeah.
I tried to. I was not speaking good English back then, not at all. And actually, all these songs I was writing, I was using the dictionary and some, lines from the songs I knew, the classic songs. So I just put together all these just to create some picture, some view, of some evil picture, like the Decapitated Saints. That was the first one that was written in English from the scratch. It was not translated like Reborn in Flames, for example. Later on, that was just created from the scratch in English. And I tried to learn our ex-singer, and I just couldn't. You couldn't get it. Yeah. And that was one live performance in the south of Poland, and that was the first time I was singing Decapitated Saints, been playing. And after that, like, many friends said, like, oh, that sounded pretty good. And, after that, and because I couldn't find anybody to sing in Vader in the meantime, and we already had that studio session booked in a radio for that Necrolist.
Right.
And so I decided just to try. Give me a try, and exactly like you said, like if you follow the Necrolist and Morbid Reich and the Ultimate Incantation and the Solitude, you see the progress. And I was just looking for addition for how to sing. I was trying to different style of singing, screaming.
Yeah.
And I think the Black to the Blind in 98, that was the first album. I found a way, and actually what happened after that, it was just natural evolution and just developing of the style of vocal. But what was before, it was just kind of like I was trying, experimenting with my vocal, So the first demo sounds more like even like a black metal. The second one was more deep, like I was just. It was just not loud, Now I'm screaming very loud, It comes from a balls. And back then it was just trying different, like with the throat, screaming like that, different, And that was more experiment, But as I said, I didn't want to sing in Vader. Like I adopted that later on, but actually I really focused more on the vocal, maybe couple of albums before since now, but what happened before it was just all right, I'm a singer, okay.
Well,
one man less on stage, it's easy to move in that.
Right.
Oh yeah, sure.
In a smaller place.
I think it worked out though.
Yeah, it worked out. So moving to Ultimate Incantation, I don't know if a lot of people know, but you originally recorded in Sunlight Studios, right?
Yeah.
And have those recordings ever been unearthed?
You know what? It was a cold March in 1992, and that was our very first trip abroad of Poland.
Okay.
And we made that trip to Sweden, and that was even a problem because we were supposed to go together with the whole band, but the guitarist, he just broke leg a week before we were supposed to go, so he left. He just stayed home, and the bass player who just joined the band, like he never ever showed up with us, and he was a singer and bass player in a band called Slaughter, Polish Slaughter.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They changed the name to Betrayer after.
Okay.
And but he actually. We were just confused because we missed. Actually, we almost missed the ferry to Sweden because of some misunderstanding with the place of departure. So there was like actually two main places in Poland: is Gdańsk in the middle north, and Szczecin is like west north, and. We went to a west, and that was so we almost missed that because we had to just get back. And actually, because of that problem, the burial he stayed because we just couldn't wait for him anymore. Yeah. So that was some issues after that, but whatever, that it just happened. Whatever. And we came to Sunlight Studio. I would like the first shocking thing to me was it was pretty small, actually. And because we know nothing about like the sizes, about like studio, the proper one, but we knew some great albums recorded in that one already. Entombed, Dismember, many of those good albums.
Right.
And actually, we started to recording. It took like around 2 weeks, I think, to record that. And the biggest problem was there was no room for a real drum kit in that place. So Thomas Scottberry, he was using this pads, electronic pads, triggers, and that was a shock, and especially for Doc, he's a good drummer, but it's different for a drummer to use pads because it works different. Skins work different. It's
rebound is different. It's all different.
Today, the modern pads, they're different because they actually like a regular skins, just
like mesh heads.
Those that's different. Those were different. Those just like funny looking, like kind of
big rubber pads.
Smaller. Yeah, it was kind of rubber more than real. Like, so you couldn't, set up this, like drummers do.
Right.
And of course he did it, but it sounded, especially because of drums. So we lost much speed, because of that shit. And it sounded, the amplifier was also kind of like, I didn't like that much, but I had no choice because we had no backline. We did not own anything like really good, Even guitars I was used, it was just handmade. It was all right, but far from being really good. And what we recorded, I was all right, but we asked Eric Records, but Eric Records was our record company for the debut album. And they agreed with that. And they said, like, okay, so we can just make it again in England, at the Redden Studios. And we did. And this is the Ultimatation,
Right.
And but then we had like a week or something for everything because the budget was already done.
Right.
And that was much better because the drums were real. So all in all, it might be nice information because like we were trying to release the Swedish session.
Yeah.
It's more for collectors, just for fans, just to compare how it was, and sound and everything. And there was just some problems with Eric. They not easy to cooperate with anything like license or whatever. We want to pay twice for everything, like for limited, but finally we gave up with that. So that's why we had to record the Ultimate Incantation from scratch to make it again under different title with different cover because of rights and everything.
Okay.
But I hear that Eric Records they plan now just to release the special edition of Swedish version soon.
Okay.
This year, so who knows? Maybe some of those songs are available. They are available on YouTube, like so we can just hear it.
Okay.
And feel that difference in sound.
Right.
But it was not. It was just not easy, for us. And that was different band. We had actually we had no gear, and we were just scared. It was first time in the West. That was like wow. We had just spent hours in the studio focusing on the music. After that, we again tried to the city to party, with some friends from Sweden.
Yeah.
So we tried to see some shows over there, pretty good, by the way. So I think we had a chance to see one of last Carcass show.
Oh, nice.
After they just ceased to play for a long time.
Right.
And from musically speaking, that was far from we wanted to show. But as I said, that was a level we couldn't get up without good instruments, with our own gear, without some more experience. Like we had no experience with that. So that came later, a little bit later.
Right. And it was cool to follow your evolution. I mean, I think the notable one for me was Sothis in 94, and then De Profundis is my absolute favorite because I almost felt like you really started to create that, I guess what you would call signature Vader sound that has kind of carried on from then till now. Especially, I mean, Doc's playing has always been fantastic, and I'm a drummer by trade, so he's been one of my favorites, and I don't think people realize that back then there weren't many of these amazingly fast and proficient drummers around. I mean, you had Gene Hoglan and you had Sean Reinert, and I'll even put you had Alex Marquez from Loveland Creation and some of these guys, but there weren't a ton of Sandoval, and then obviously Steve from Deicide. But it wasn't this plethora that you have now. There was some key guys, you can count them on your hands, maybe 10 of them. And then you had your favorites. But Doc was always my favorite when I was a teenager because his style was so unique. Yeah. It was so different. He had the qualities of a Gene Hoglan that I liked because Gene was always tasteful in his playing and played for the song, but then he would add these little nuances that made it him. And Doc did a lot of that stuff too, and I think he really branched out by De Profundis.
I remember when we were touring for the first time in the U.S., and we were with the Suffocation in the West Coast, and that was a show it was in Los Angeles, if I remember, and that was the first time we met Gene Hoglan, in person. I couldn't believe, Gene Hoglan, like a huge guy. Yeah. And with that kind of like a stick, it was just with that silver skull on that, if I remember, something like that. And with the glasses, he came to us after the show and he said, my heroes, may I have you a drink? And I was that was like a slap in the face, you know. It was like, it's not real. You know? It's like, Genius, you know, I know him especially after like Darkness Descends album, you know, which is still like one of my favorite like death metal album from those times.
Yeah.
And all times. And, you know, to have a chance to even just to take a picture with him, to stay next to him, just to have a drink with Gene, you know, I was absolutely crazy, you know, for this. Like, I just wish I could speak better English back then, just to speak. I was just too scared too much to say a word, you know, so I was just like, you know? But that was absolutely fantastic. And, so it was so nice just to meet him again years after, even when we had just to tour with him with Testament, you know.
Okay.
And Jen drumming for Testament. So absolutely amazing person, amazing drummer, and you know, and of course it's one of those guys, you know, and one of those drummers who can always inspire you. I'm not a drummer, but I'm pretty much inspired by drummers because, in my opinion, everything starts with a good drummer. You can't be really good, like extreme metal band without like a serious drummer, you know, a good drummer in that. And it's like a backbone. It's like a spine of everything. And if you got good drummer, everything is just fulfilling, you know, the music, you know. But the good drummer is a priority.
Right.
I full-heartedly agree with that. And that really, so that being here at, you know, Future of the Past, it makes sense then to choose some of the cuts that you did. Obviously Dark Angel and, you know, Black Sabbath and more of the bigger stuff, you know, more of the stuff that I guess be a little bit more expected, I guess, at this point. And so I was even really interested then when you did Future of the Past Part 2, especially when you just said there, because I didn't know that. I just learned that now when you brought up China being in the Polish Slaughter. Like, I only presumed that when I saw Slaughter there was a Polish one, but I didn't know there was a Polish one. But I did know, like, you know, Merciless Death, and I'm not going to butcher some of the names for the other ones, but, you know, I knew those bands.
Magnus.
And Magnus unfortunately wasn't on there, but that would have been really cool. But that's entirely the point, is like these really obscure Polish bands that do have recordings, they do have demos and stuff, but like some of that stuff is pretty, you know, rough to listen to. And so I thought it was just, first off, really cool, just the fact that it's like Vader's doing these obscure Polish bands and covers of, but then the thought of like, what was that like learning these songs? Because like some of it might be kind of hard, or it could be like one of those things where you're trying to dodge the or like comprehend, like, how do you cover this? Because it could be maybe sloppier, like, you know, like was any of that kind of stuff in mind? Like when you're listening, like maybe I can't hear this guitar note to figure it out, you know, were there just things about its, you know, amateur production in those bands that made that hard?
You know what? This is cover, so there's no rules, you know. You can just, it's your vision, and you don't need to do exactly like somebody other thinks I should, you know. So we did covers, you know, because of respect to those days and to those bands, our friends, by the way. And so we wanted just to show up to the Polish scene from early 90s, you know, actually late 80s, yeah. Because when that was, you know, that was the story about that, because the Future of the Past, after we recorded the first part, you know, with all these influential classical names, bands, and so many fans asked us just to maybe do another one with some other bands, because there was like so many other bands like that supposed to be there, like absolutely worthy to mention and to show up and to bring back, you know, for the new generation, because that was, you know, the main idea of that.
Yeah.
And but you know, the idea was, I was changing the idea like sometimes, because I remember there was an idea just to do covers of some non-metal bands, you know, for that. But then I said, nah, that wouldn't be, and you know,
a little too far.
And just idea about like bringing back the old Polish underground scene came just occasionally. It was just like wow, let's do that. The next month we just entered the studio and we recorded this. And the only, because you mentioned Magnus, but Magnus recorded album, and we wanted to show up the bands that were pretty much important in the foreign metal scene in the 80s. And they just gave up in the meantime. They did not really release something important.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, if we would like just to show up all these important bands, that would be probably like triple album, you know.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And from the other side, we wanted to show up like not just Poland. Firstly, I wanted to show up something like the bigger picture of what happened behind the Iron Curtain.
Right.
It was just hard to get, you know, the bands. You know, I remember I wanted to give the Hungarian Tormentor, but I really couldn't find any like decent source of music just to do anything, you know, and everything sounded so crap. I couldn't hear nothing, you know.
Right.
So this is exactly what I tried to say. I was, you know, we could do cover, but at least you could hear anything, you know.
Yeah.
Anything, you know. Like I remember, like I tried to cover the very early song of Imperator. And I found it, and I remember we like listened with James, and James said, "That sounds like a bee in a box." And it sounded exactly like that. So that was the main reason why I changed the mind just to find one of the classic song, but they recorded that on a better quality later on. So that's why I choose a Necronomicon. Because that was kind of like a main song for Imperator back then, and I found a better version of that one. So I was able to do anything with the drummer.
Yeah.
And you know, the same, like Vader was not the only band in the 80s. We had friends. We had just plenty of bands. Those you know from the compilation, the names you mentioned, like Merciless Death. That was my favorite, I think. A Slaughter as well as Slashing Death, you know. We are friendly. We're friendly. Like we did shows together, you know. And actually, the underground scene we are creating together, it was strong because of Brotherhood. We organized shows in our own, and we're inviting like the others, and that's how we did. It was the only way because nobody really cared about that. Yeah. There was no media interested in that. So, but we are like living parallel to all this business, let's say. And, you know, many of those bands, as you see, it's absolutely worth it to bring them back and show up the potential, you know. And, you know, not all of bands like me as just, you know, so nothing can stop me. Like, and maybe some gave up in the meantime because they just started families. So, you know, they just found some other things in life interesting. I don't know. It's just many reasons.
Right,
know,
of course.
It's like anything else.
Yeah.
And but you know, the bands, you know, they created some nice demo tapes, and absolutely they were pretty great, and so it was an honor just to bring them back. And you know what was pretty nice, some of those bands we covered on that compilation. After many years, some of them started to play again, even for fun.
Oh, cool.
You know, and that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice just to bring back some old guys, you know, back on stage. Just they of course they had jobs. They didn't have much time for that, but they had still some passion woke up.
Right.
And I remember we like talking with some guys, and like they were so happy they bought the equipment just to play, you know. Even it was so nice, you know, because this is all the music brings, the fun, you know. And,
yeah.
We started with that, and you know, when we started with Vader, so nobody was ever like dreamt that we can just survive for more than 10 years, you know, and that we can just be a professional death metal players. That was out of questions. Like that came years later, and that was hard decisions in life, you know. And how about that's the other story.
Yeah, it's funny that you you say how like the band's kind of had a resurgence almost be through your effort, because similarly it kind of happened before with Reaper Metal. Before it was Reaper Metal Productions, I did Reaper Metal Records, and one of the releases that I really had to work hard to get was to release Magnus' first album, Scarlet Slaughterer, again. And like, you know, even finding the band, like I had to go through, you know, the next wave of tape treasures, I guess, like, but a guy in Germany just to be like, hey, you know, one of the guys in Magnus. And then when you get in touch with him, it's like, well, he doesn't speak any English, so he needs somebody that can speak Polish. And, you know, it was a big effort. And then when it finally happened, though, you know, I put out the CD version, and then all of a sudden it seemed like there was a label that then did a vinyl version, and then another label did one of their other albums, and it was like, it was kind of that trickle effect you just described. Yeah. And that was so cool, though, good. You know?
But they absolutely worthy, because they did the music they recorded, like the first demos and everything, that's absolutely great. You know, I remember Magnus because they were from Wrocław, from the south of Poland.
Yeah,
the Spiders from that city, and I was pretty often a visitor in that city because I love Wrocław. You know, I love the city, and there were so many friends, and even the Pavel Adrian. He was a guy who wrote like many great lyrics for Vader.
I was going to ask,
And yes, unfortunately, he committed suicide after he decided something. I don't know. I didn't want to dig it up and that, but that was bad, you know. And he was just a weird guy. I met him like a few times in Wrocław. Like you couldn't believe when you see him. We couldn't believe he got such a huge, you know, imagination, and he's so much into that darkness, maybe too much. Yeah. That's why the decision came out.
Maybe, yeah.
It's hard to say, maybe. He had some problems to understand, like, the real world, you know, and actually what I said about metal and this word we created to escape to, so he created his own world.
Yeah.
That was probably something odd, totally different, you know, and I don't think anybody of us could understand that, but that's very, very private, you know, very, very specific, you know. But the lyric he was creating for us, man, that was extraordinary. It was really, really great.
It was so cool.
And whatever, and you know, and we are partying with Magnus plenty of times. You know, I remember we'll even play together in Moscow in 1991
with Cannibal Corpse,
like 7,000 people, and I was, man, the trip to Moscow. We were like driven by train. I could write a book about that trip. I was so sick, you know, back then. That was still Soviet Union back then, you know. So
what about
when we came? We're like heroes, you know.
Was that the show with Cannibal Corpse there? Do you remember?
No, absolutely not. That was just us. We were headlining. That was Magnus and Bloodlust, the other guys, and some local guys from Russia.
Oh, okay. What about Rob Bag? You talk about spikes and stuff in the early days of Vader, man. Magnus.
He was using that nails, that Barry King style, you know, by both hands and legs. You know, he was like that. You know, that how do you call that animal?
Porcupine.
Yeah.
It's maybe more like those dinosaurs.
Yes.
You know, the spikes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember he was entering the stage. He was just like a knight, like in a steel. It was just that sound, you know. Like,
yeah. I heard
like Melga.
I heard a story that like somebody threw an apple at a Magnus show one time and it got stuck in one.
Oh yeah. An apple. We did some jokes with that as well.
Getting back to your lyrics, though. Well, go ahead.
Rob was crazy, and he was crazy about Motorhead, Priest, Saxon, those guys. And I remember we like traveling like an hours in a train and drinking vodka and talking about bands and music all the time. You know, that was crazy.
I want to get back to your lyrics, and Pavel. I thought it was always so cool seeing the lyrics, but then also you used to do those. I don't know if there was an explanation of the lyrics or just kind of expanding upon the lyrics. I always thought that was a really cool, unique thing to do.
Introduction, that's maybe.
Right. Yeah, I was always super into it.
I came with the idea for De Profundis for the first time, I think.
Right.
And because we had him and we had some other guys, the Pavel Frelich, his first lyric for Silent Empire. And I just wanted to let them do the introduction in their own word, to close up the source of inspiration. Because I was not writing them, so it's really hard to me to talk about that. I adopted them because, as all other songs in Vader, you can interpret them pretty freely.
Sure.
And I love that, actually. And even if I create my songs, and even if there is some real story behind that, I still make a story. So you can interpret it in an absolutely different way. And that's why I could adopt that in the past, So I was not... Actually, for many fans, like these introductions can close up some sources of the knowledge, of inspiration, and I think that was also a good thing, just to push people for action,
right?
To make them active in searching, and if they like the music or if they like some magic or some, the philosophy, those kind of things, so they can just still find some source, a guide, where we'll look around, what it's all about, shortly speaking.
Well, what happened then? Because I'm not even going to pronounce the title, but the 2014 album,
TB,
yeah. Like there was, pardon any typewriter tough guy that's going to call me out, you didn't do your research or whatever. It was a moment since I've listened to that album, but I do remember there was I thought there was one song on there where it was like in German entirely, or was it? There's definitely a song with just one section that you do some German spoken lyrics.
Which one? TB?
Yeah.
Hexenkessel.
Yeah. What?
Hexenkessel. Actually, that's one of example of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
In a moment ago. It's a Hexenkessel is like witch's pot in German.
Okay.
And in the Middle Ages, it was all about witchcraft, and Hexenkessel was used for some witchcraft trials, and it was known word. But also, Hexenkessel was a name for, in the Second World War, in the Eastern Front, when the Germans were encircled. And especially if that was winter time, and that was really bad situation, they called it Hexenkessel.
Oh.
It's called was just no escape, and they were just inside and was bombed, and that was scary,
Yeah.
It happened that many times, and actually this song's inspired by all this horror that happened in the Eastern Front for soldiers. I was after some books I read about what happened in how horrors those guys survived, in this frost that came 40 minus, it's really horror. That was really clash of systems, in East, especially in East. And but the story I made could be also take as a story about witchcraft and something like that. So all depends on the interpretation.
Right.
And this is what I'm talking about,
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and even though I guess it was more so on the covers, with the Polish bands and stuff. It's just kind of funny because you do it in Polish, so it's like just hearing that story of talking about not knowing English, and it's like here you go and do all these albums in English and stuff, and then later in your career it's just like crap. If we could have done that 20 years earlier, it might have been a little bit easier doing it in Polish. But I really think it's interesting to throw those different languages in there because, like you said, there's obviously the interpretation value where us dumb Americans Americans in this room, we're never going to know to even interpret, let alone what it just verbatim says. But like, it just, you know what I mean? It really just puts all this other stuff like you just described together, because it'll always kind of keep that, you know, mysterious aspect of the interpretation of like, what are these stories? And then just throw all these different languages in there. It's like, it's appropriate, because it's almost like characters and stuff too, you know? And that's even one of the things that I really love about the fact that there is a highlight to the Polish scene, because it isn't like it's a household subgenre like we got like Bay Area thrash or Florida death metal, you know, Swedish, like, you know, I guess there is a term of, you know, Polish death metal or Polish metal, but like, you know, you don't get the laundry list of all the genres, and there's a lot of stuff there, and it's just a very different tone, you know, and I think maybe because of history or whatever, some of that stuff could be just a different kind of dynamic of like darkness and stuff, because of, you know, things that happen there, you know, like you said, being behind the Iron Curtain and all that, whatever might play into it. And I just think that's very appropriate for metal, for one. And it's, you know, just something that the rest of the world should know, because, you know, we're all talking about the same stupid subgenres and fascinated with the same countries. Right. So, you know, to dig a little bit further, there's a lot of gems in there.
Well, that's something I wanted to bring to Peter's attention too, is, well, I was like a super Polish metal fan, at least, maybe not the early stuff, because at the time I was a 14-year-old, like listening to Vader or whatever. Right. But I would try to find any other Polish bands I could find. So we talk about Trauma and even Doc's side project, Dies Irae.
With Novi.
Yeah, with Novi, and then obviously Behemoth started coming up. But Vader really paved the path for, I guess, international scene to start paying attention to Poland. I mean, it worked on me. I started digging into all the smaller bands like Trauma, The Yattering, all that stuff, just based on the love I had for Vader. I just wanted to hear more bands from the area and what they sounded like, and if they sounded like you or they had their own unique sound. So how did it feel, I guess, being that torchbearer for the Polish sound on the international scene? And then when bands like Behemoth and Decapitated obviously started and getting popularity on their own as well.
You know what? That story is slightly different, actually, in my opinion, because like we're just a bit lucky and a bit older than the others, and you know, always somebody has to be first, right? Yeah. And that was Vader. You know, that was a big deal back in the '92, especially after we released the second demo tape, Morbid Drake, in 1990, and we made it very professional. It was like not common in Poland back then, and we spread it around, and I don't know how many. We sold thousands of them. Wow. Those tapes. It was I had no idea how many releases, legal, official, not official, was made in the next years. Many, and I lost control on that. But actually, that demo gave us a deal for a first album, and for which we were waiting almost a decade. You know, so that's also not really common in the West, because in the West, when you started, you know, recording a demo tape, usually you had the deal and the first album very soon after that. Yeah. So since we started to play and until we got the first demo tape and first album, it was almost 10 years. You know. Right. 10 years, actually. So that's a lot. Yeah. And you know, we're just like working locally in Polish underground scene together. And actually, after we signed a deal with Eric, which was pretty legendary, you know, they had for extreme metal fans, they had like gods on their wings. Right. They had like all the bands like Napalm Death, Morbid Angel, Entomb, the Bolt Rubber, just mentioned before, but there was like many of those, you know, and to be among those and to play with them, go on tour with them after that, that was absolutely crazy, you know, and really we couldn't believe that. For fans, you know, for Polish fans, and not even fans of music, for many Polish people, you know, young people who just was thinking about like doing the music, a band, something, So what happened to Vader? The deal, the tour outside, like professional, the video clip in MTV.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was like, can't even believe how important
Right.
it was for Poland and for Polish scene at all. That was like a holiday when they were playing there for the first time, and that was more important. Vader actually, they were a hope for all those guys and people.
Right.
So we opened the gate for some Polish bands. Like after Vader, first years was not like everybody who started to be interested in Polish scene. Nah, that came later on.
Yeah.
But after we broke through, and especially been under the wings of Earache, so more people just started to be more interested in what's happening in Poland, and start to be more interested in Polish scene at all. But what I said, not just that, hope in general. Because like Poland, like all the citizens after all what happened, all this system we're living under pressure, communism. So we needed hope, just we can live normally. So even we came from here with no gear, no media support, no nothing, we still can exist.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. And everything started, many bands started to exist, and we're honored with that after that success. So that was not just Vader's success straight, that was success of all underground in Poland. Because like we're living, imagine that some bands, they were just cooperating with some prospering business in Poland, music business, and they couldn't do that. And Vader, bands from somewhere, like recording a demo tape for a bottle of vodka somewhere, like sounding crap, in their opinion.
Right.
They have a deal with one of the biggest, extreme metal record company in the world. That was why. Why?
This is a damn good demo.
For those guys, that was like a slap in the face. It was just, that was showed them that not everything means money, and there was something different. Some new music is just about to be born,
right?
And for the young bands like us back then, so that hope that we can do that. We don't need media. We don't need like business. We still can do that in our own if we really have passion and believe in what we do.
Right.
Shortly speaking.
And
that was the beginning. And what happened later on, it was just more natural because the Poland started to change. Everything started to be more easy for bands, for people, and we became in the years. It took years, of course, but it was already kind of easy. We were like pathfinders,
right,
for those bands. Of course, everybody tried to speak to us how it is on tour outside, and then we tried to just give them some information. So we were like those guys in the past, who were travelers and were bringing some information about how the world looks like.
You're like the informants.
Seriously, literally.
Yeah, I bet.
People, it's just.
At what point then did like Vader become a career for you? Then, where you like? I'm assuming that it is currently that you're not doing any other job.
Career, that was that's too big word about that. So
yeah.
It took another years. I think that was around 97, 98 when I had to decide what I'm going to do. And I just quit the university. I was almost done I was a biology student. And I had to decide because I knew I'm not going to do that so we are already after some tours in the West. And that was kind of hard decision because that was a risk, nobody knew what was going to happen,
Right,
and
right.
I don't know, my parents were totally against that. They said I'm stupid, it's just like, how am I going to get money from that? Like, it was a time I had 2 newborn kids.
Oh, wow.
My son was born in 92 and my daughter 2, not even years after that. So I had just 1 album recorded. We had like second one, and I had no house. I was just some rented flat, it's like not easy, and in life, but we're still like going on, so that was a hard decision just to say that, okay, I quit everything and I'm going to focus on the music only.
Right.
But we did it, and you have to risk in your life something.
Yes.
You have to just, to do something. If I really believed in the music, and I'm a fan. I'm not just a musician who want to, be famous. No, nobody was thinking that way.
Yeah.
But after what happened, after we had to deal with Eric, after we already released a few albums in the meantime, getting tourings, I was already, everything's going in a good way. So why not?
Right.
Let's do that.
I want to go to some recording stuff. This is something that Reaper and I have had discussions about in the past, actually with past guests. So one of our past guests was Marco from The Crown from Sweden, and we had kind of gotten great band, and we had kind of gotten into conversation about re-recordings and bands who record an album a long time ago and then they re-record it later on. And I don't know any other band other than who has done it more than Vader. Vader has re-recorded so many things from Reborn in Chaos to XXV to some of this newer stuff.
And even the title,
Dark Ages.
Welcome back,
welcome back to Morbid Reich.
I tried to explain the situation with Dark Age like a while ago. So it's not that we wanted to do that. Sometimes we are forced to do that. So for 25th anniversary of our debut album, the album Incantation, we wanted to release that in a proper way. We wanted to make the licensed version of original Eric recordings, plus that Swedish Sunlight session, and we couldn't do that because we couldn't find, we couldn't cooperate with Eric. Like they were not interested, to give us a license, for that. Even
that sucks too.
The really strictly limited one,
Right.
I can't judge, Eric. I didn't like that, of course, because it's not really, but it's not just Vader who just had that problem, because I know that Morbid Ends and Napalm Death, they
Decapitated
said
has
bad
problems,
words about that. Yes, but Eric, actually, I can't say bad words totally about them because they helped us to break through, and without Eric, it wouldn't happen like what happened later. So even if the story was pretty short, like together, but still gave us a chance to show up in the West, in US and in Europe, and they released the first album. That was a big deal for us. But of course, it would be much better if they would work like Nuclear Blast. This is more like family, and this is real cooperation between the record company and the bands. But I don't understand it, but I can't judge that. It's just Eric.
Okay.
And that's why we had to do that in our own way, and the only way was just to record the album, let's say again from the scratch, to have different cover, different title. Actually, that was a title that it's supposed to be the title of original album. I changed the idea to Ultimate Incantation actually in the last second. It was just very late. But Dark Age, like the first song, the opening track, that was the first idea to name the whole album.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, so finally, after 25 years, I can just release it in that way. But 20, that's the other one, which we called 25.
Yep.
That was a special edition we made for all our Vader fans who know us since the beginning or who join us later on. And we wanted to bring back all these classic Vader songs, 25 of them on one release, recorded on one session. Because the albums, they sounded different. And, to record those songs again in one song, it gives you the wider picture about the whole story of Vader.
Right.
It's easier to understand how it was the evolution of the Vader and music and everything. Because sound always, it's just the separate factor, to decide about everything.
Right.
And so that was more like a gift for fans, for 25th, the band's anniversary.
Yeah. And
that's it. The Reborn in Chaos, that was different because that was more like releasing again the old demos for a new generation of Vader fans, just using the opportunity to have something. It's
right.
Like 10 years ago, the situation was not that nice for bands who are not selling like really many copies. And actually, in my opinion, that's pretty fair. The all money we have is mostly for playing shows and selling gadgets and merchandise.
Right.
And that's why releasing sometimes, and especially after we just...
Uh-oh. Did this one do it?
The first official Vader store line. So that was can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for like a second,
but you're good.
We got you.
I'm here?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Damn internet.
That's just different. So we gave what we could give for fans, like music.
Yeah.
In our neck. All right.
Well, it's cool. I
don't think it's something said. So calling us like just we try. Whatever.
It's cool. I always appreciate it. It was kind of cool to hear. It was cool to hear a different version of a lot of that stuff, and kind of getting back to the people who were a part of that, and talking about the spine being the drummer and those kind of things. You guys have always been fortunate to have some of the best drummers, from Doc to Dare to James. And I don't know who was in between those guys, but obviously Dare went... Paul? Okay.
Yeah.
Dare went to Dimmu, obviously. And do you still have a good relationship with him? Because he was actually on the tour that we were on together for the Impressions of Blood.
Pretty much.
Yeah. He was a nice guy. He was a good guy.
He works also... He's drumming also for a band called Hunter. It's absolutely different kind of music. It's still like pretty much connected with metal. It's like more like metal rock kind of style.
Okay.
That's pretty popular. They sing in Polish, so there's like more easy to get for many people who do not speak English. And Polish language became pretty trendy lately. And some bands like Mgła, like Furia, Slug, like the bands with the Polish names, the Polish titles, Polish lyrics. So it became pretty popular in Poland now at the moment, since like 5 years something. And it's also kind of interesting for some people outside of Poland. That the metal scene's changed a lot, and today many bands and many music of the bands we name metal, they wouldn't be called metal like in the 90s. Like
right.
Probably I know fans who would just like kill some guys who are playing metal today. Even for how they look like.
Right.
But that's different story. That's also different worlds. Like we could just probably spend hours talking about those days and how is the difference between that. Actually that movie about the Bay Area thrashers, There's a Murder in the Front Row. That's pretty much a little bit about that,
Right, kill posers, yeah.
Kill posers. Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Well, I wanted to compliment your drummer, James, because I think, obviously Dare was fantastic and he's a machine. And I don't think he started that way, though. I think Dare had, from some interviews I read way back, that he had some work to do to get to where he was, where he ended up, obviously, where he is today. But
all of drummers had to do that.
Yes, of course.
Even when Doc joined the band, he couldn't even play double bass.
Wow.
Actually, I remember we were trying to borrow some like the bass drum from an absolutely different drum kit, and I remember him starting just to play double bass before we entered the studio to record Necrolust.
Wow.
Because that was the first time he was playing double bass. He became master of that one, but that came later. But you don't even know how much time he spent. Like he was a very hard working guy. And so all of the drummers, actually, I had the honor and pleasure to play with in Vader. So they're very hard working people, and for effects, the effects you can just hear on the albums and see on shows. Like all of those are really, really good. Same with James. When James entered Vader, so he was already like a very good drummer.
Yeah.
At the start, but his progress was like
yes.
really, but he's probably the hardest working drummer like in history.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up too. You can hear it, and me being I went to school for music. Actually, I went to school for percussion, and so maybe I'm more critical. But this is the first time. Well, and maybe because I'm such a fan of Doc's playing as well, and I know it so well. This is the first time on this record, even though James has played on other records for you, that it actually, if I close my eyes, it could be Doc playing to me. I mean, I think he's really captured the vibe for you guys. He's really got it.
I remember right before I saw James playing some Vader tunes for first time. I had that dream, and I was dreaming about Doc talking to me something, and I was not dreaming about Doc for years before, And I don't know, don't take me wrong, but I took it as a kind of sign, And soon after, I received some pictures, some movies of James. He just recorded some video of him playing some Vader songs. I sent a list of, and he tried to show me his play also from behind, his feet, and everything, just to know that this is not just a trick.
right.
Which is smart already. I like that already at the start, because it's smart. He's not trying to cheat. He's just trying to show this real ability.
Right.
And after he was start to play, and this manner of hitting the cymbals, he was so like Doc, I remember Doc just hitting the cymbals, and that was exactly like that.
Wow.
And I said, like, God damn it, it's just unbelievable. So everything started like that. Then we started to play, his first show with us. That was actually a huge one. We had a festival in Poland, and everything started. And then he was not that good yet in the blast beating, and it's hard to believe it today. And but seriously, he was really, really hardworking, drumming, and he tried just to smuggle some styles of different drummers, not just metal drummers.
Right.
And so it was same with Doc. Doc was, what I remember, he was also pretty open for it was not like me. I was orthodox in the band. But he was more open to all the styles.
Yeah.
And he tried to smuggle some things, for playing. That's why he's playing on drum. Drum's a specific instrument. You know that.
Right.
You're a drummer.
Yeah.
And when you play guitar, you got melodies and rhythms are combined, but it's really hard to talk about melody on the drums.
Yeah, right.
You can play with the rhythm, especially if you play so intense.
Yes.
And that was Doc's style, and that same style. Actually, all the drummers play with Vader. There's the difference between the James and James, Doc, and the Dara and Paul. Paul and Dara, they were more like modern style of drummers. Right. They use more technology. They play different. But the James is more like old school. He got the strong hit from hands. Same with feet, and that makes a difference. That's that unique really work twice hard just to gain the same level. Like playing, with this real hits, not just this
tip tap,
like touching drums.
Right. So I wanted to bring that up just because I've been such a intense Vader fan for so long that this really reminds me. This could have honestly followed up De Profundis and Black to the Blind. I hear a lot of the same kind of riffage coming back. And, the cool thing about you guys is you've always kind of incorporated everything. I mean, you always have that furious, fast, intense stuff, but then you always are able to mix it up with songs like Carnal and those kind of things. Yeah, you're Vader, yeah. So I love it, and I've always been a fan of it. But when you talked about, Doc being open to different influences and you were maybe more the metal guy, what then inspired you to do like the Depeche Mode cover when you did like I Feel You and stuff like that?
That was Doc.
Yeah, that was Doc.
That was Doc. He came with the idea. And that was a smart actually move from our side, because that was a time when metal music was not that popular in the media, and especially in radio in Poland. And I remember there was, once we played a show It was like a very small club. We played that. That was not even announced before. So we're like coming back from one of a tour in Czech Republic, and that place, that club was named Revolution, by the way.
Okay.
And it was just on the way. So we had some friends over there. So we stayed connected, and when we were coming back, he said, "Hey, just step by." So we have some drinks. Okay, maybe we can do a show. All right. So we did, and I remember like there were some guys like marching in front of that. No, it was not really stage, something like, and they were still asking to play Venom, all drunk. Play Venom, play Venom. And I remember Doc started to play that rhythm, and and we joined with that riff for I Feel You.
Yeah.
And we started to play that, and everybody will still keep moshing, and then somebody said, "It's not Venom," but whatever. And we remember that when we were in the studio, been recording De Profundis, and we wanted to record something like a single, which was additional CD for Thrasher Mall magazine.
Okay.
It was one of the most popular extreme metal magazine in Poland back then. And also we wanted to have something on a single that would be more adopted for media, and the first song was An Act of Darkness, which is just short, typical Vader style, very fast, one of the fastest in the Profundis song. But the other one, we made it special, and we choose the I Feel You, but we didn't name it I Feel You, which was like a
I-F-Y, yeah.
Y,
right.
And that to make a difference. And I just make a little bit change in the lyrics. So this is more about a vampiric story.
Okay.
If you just follow the lyric, of course it sounds like, because I wanted to make it sounded like original, and but this is little changes make the total change of everything. And of course the voice, the cover is totally different,
right,
for Vader and for everything else. And what was absolutely extraordinary, the Depeche Mode fans, which were absolutely enemies of metalheads.
Right.
So that was totally opposite way. They loved, many of them, they loved that version.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was wow.
Yeah.
And seriously, it was working, because in many stations in Poland, if they played the Depeche Mode cover of Vader, they had to play the other one, which was typical Vader.
Yeah,
so that was the deal. That's why we made that trick.
That's cool. Well, I've always been a fan of Depeche Mode.
But nobody expected that
No.
that cover became kind of more than popular than we expected.
Right.
Because the idea was different, to the core.
Well, yeah, especially at that time. I mean, no one would have anticipated a death metal band to cover Depeche Mode or Kraftwerk or anything like that. So you had to have a lot of balls to do something like that, and I thought it was really cool, and it just endeared. Well, it endeared me more to you guys, because I did grow up with an aunt who was in a goth band, and so I grew up with some of that stuff too, and so I loved Depeche Mode. And when you guys did it, I was kind of blown away. One more thing I want to talk about, and let Reaper ask what he's going to ask, is your voice. So there's only so many voices in death metal that are iconic. Obviously David Vincent's one, Chris Barnes was one, Glenn Benton was one. You are one of those guys, and it's very few and far between, especially in this day and age when you have thousands of bands. You don't know none of them have character anymore, but you have character, and you've always had distinct characters. So I would like to hear, we talked a little bit about the early days in the voice, but I would like to hear the progression where you were trying to find your voice, and you found obviously what became that Vader iconic vocal, because it always reminded me of kind of this David Vincent-esque, because you could always hear what you were saying, and I thought that was really cool, and not many death metal bands were doing that at the time. It was more over the top, guttural, just as brutal as they could be. But yours was it was so in your face and aggressive, and you could hear what you were saying. So even to this day, I think it's one of the most powerful death metal vocals ever. So I just would like to hear more of your you never wanted to be a singer. So how did you kind of come about finding that voice? Yeah.
I was not really looking for that. It just happened.
Yeah, right.
That. And I never was so much into experiments, and but the last years, since we recorded some albums, because the guitar is, guitar, I'm not the guy, like, I have Spider, it's more shredder in the guitar, so it's more into that, kind of. I was always more into just noisy play and the riffs,
Right.
And I never really focused on the vocal, like I said before, and after the guitars, just not much, just to do more than that, just to use the whole abilities I already possessed, but so I turned more into vocal and tried to experiment more in that, so in the last releases you can find that I'm trying, especially in the last one, and I'm trying just to make the voice more not that boring, and don't take me wrong, you just mentioned some vocalists that created the style and they're so iconic, but that was my early years when I'm trying to find a way, just like more growling, or just like this. And always on stage, I was more open just to experiment and to do something I never did on the album in a studio. And many fans and friends just ask me why I'm not do that in the studio. I was like, nah, it's just, on stage, I feel that's the emotions, it's adrenaline, so right. It works different to me. In studio, I just like different, But all in all, they were right, it's like, why not? And I just maybe just put all together and try just to experiment. And Scott Atkins, like the producer of the new album, he's the motivating person I was looking for. And he pushed me over the limit, and he was a guy who actually made me spending so much more time on recording vocals than ever in the past.
Oh, wow.
Usually the recording vocals for me, it came easy, it was just first take or like a second, it was just usually like that, and I never really focused on it, but we were like experimenting in the Grindstone studio, like we just had much fun with that, by the way, like trying to do different pitches, trying to make layers in the vocal. I did that before, but not that, not that much, like this thing. And all in all, if you hear all these songs in your album, almost each one sounds a little bit different, and it makes the whole album sounding more aggressive and better, just in my opinion. Of course, it's not that boring, it's just, of course, it's just, it's a matter of opinion, of course, but I always like more this angry vocal with a little bit of clarity in that than this typical Chris Barnes roaring. Even
especially now.
Even if me personally, especially in the past, like I always thought that the vocal in extreme metal is not really a words bringer, more like emotion bringer, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, right.
So that I never really care about like this pronunciation or like what I'm singing about. If you want to know, you have a booklet, you can read, right? But all in all, after years, like especially after I started to write more lyrics, like said, like maybe I can just find a balance, and just to still keep the anger, because I'm not the guy who is able to sing, and I don't want it. Vader is just, I need to keep the aggression also in the vocal, but to keep the clarity as well. And I think I succeed with that, but because like for years, like many friends and fans I was talking to, although they said that they can understand my vocal, that even if it's angry, but they can understand, this, and that's just wow, nice, and I think that maybe became something which made my style of screaming characteristic, let's say. But
Right.
I wouldn't name myself like a special vocalist or something like that. I would never put my name next to Vincent or Glenn Benton or whatever. But this came more natural to me.
Yeah.
It's just like something I liked. And this connecting to schools, the thrash metal school was
Right.
almost like more aggression and clear,
Yep.
and death metal, but death metal more like Jeff Becerra,
Right.
style,
Yeah,
or Glenn
yeah.
Benton, much this together,
Yeah, I was going to ask, were there any guys that you looked to when you were trying to kind of find your voice that you were like, oh, if I could take his voice and this voice, were there any influences in particular that you were like maybe trying to mimic at the beginning or anything like that?
Oh, like every beginning, for bands is like influences in trying to, like you call that, mimic.
Yeah.
It's natural.
Right.
And I remember when the Dayside first album came up, and I loved that Minier when he was there, like doing that natural vocal, was like very rhythmic.
Yeah.
But then, like, with this high pitch like sound, I love that.
Yeah.
And I in the first Vader records, I didn't like use that much. It came later, much later. But live on stage, why not? That was just, as I said, emotionally. So to me, it was just easy,
Yeah.
to me. The first, that's the other problem. I didn't know how to sing that, in a high pitch without like destroying the voice cords.
Right.
So I needed time just to familiarize with that style as well.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what definitely goes into it is, control and stuff. But I want to, I'm always been kind of curious by this. I'm glad this is even written down here. The band name, Vader, like, where did that come from? Presumably Star Wars?
Star Wars.
I felt that when we hit the Western world for the first time, that for many fans, we are like an exotic band, like probably like Sepultura was for the first time,
Right.
until they started to play, And in many places, it was exactly the same for Vader, I remember in the U.S. there was some before the event started, and I was trying because my English, as I said, was not that good to communicate properly. But so I knew a little bit, so I could just talk. And many fans, they just said, so we came to see D-side. You were just like open arena, probably over shit. They were talking straight to me, like fair, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But after we played, and I talked to the same guys, they said like, oh, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Just like that. And that was a huge success. Right?
Yeah.
Because, of course, like, we are opening band, opening act. I know how it works, but doesn't mean that we just not pretty serious in what we're doing, So, of course, we could not just spread the wings wide because we're opener, but still, we're absolutely great, threat by Dayside and Suffocation guys, that oldest like team. So nobody just tried to like made us sounding shitty or whatever. So we had just much spot left for support, as possible, without any, shit like acting or whatever. So that was good, and all respect for all these bands. Dayside, Sappho, lovely bands, great bands, and good people,
For sure. Something I'd like to ask our guests as we're coming to a close here is, first off, your discography is much too big for me to do it the way I typically like to do it, but I always like to ask. Yeah, it's too much. But I always like to ask guys.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I appreciate it as a fan. It's just not going to work for this question. I always like to ask your band's perspective, especially you being the main creator, the main songwriter for all these years, what your favorite albums are. And so, I've done it with The Crown. I've done it with a few other guys where we go through the discography and they'll rank them essentially 1 to whatever or least to favorite. But since you have so many, maybe I just ask, and maybe it's changed over the years, or maybe it's different today than it might be next year. But right now, if you had to give me kind of the top 5 albums you're proud of, or that are favorites to you, and I know it's hard because it's your music, but it's more interesting.
You're not talking about Vader, aren't you?
No, yeah, I am talking about Vader. Yeah, your album.
Come on, Nick.
Yeah.
How can you ask me?
Yeah,
how can you ask me about which is my favorite?
Well, it's because I
answer
feel
is
like
easy. All of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
Each album is a very important part of my life. It's just so many emotions put in that, and I might be not really satisfied with the recordings, the sound, like I said about the album Incantation. But this is just a sound, And, the album is something more. Sound might be different, might be varied, but it's just we may talk about sound like for hours, and everybody got their own favorite. It's not like that. But each one was a part of my life. Like some of them is more and less, but still. And I cannot just. It's like being a father. You could say like, which kid is your favorite?
Right.
Can't say that,
right? It's just interesting to ask because that's okay. I just feel like I have mine, and it's always interesting to hear the artist perspective because you've been there and you experience things, and maybe some you have terrible memories of, and maybe some you have great memories of. But like you said, for you, it's all special in its own way, so that's cool. But
it was was one album actually, The Beast. That was probably the first and the last one I recorded under a little bit of pressure from the public, because I remember like many and more people started to name Vader that we still play the same, It was like I said, like, with Vader we play what Vader plays, and it's like, what can we do? Like change the style?
Yeah.
Just to satisfy you or you and you? Oh, come on. But finally after like all these I said, like, okay, I recorded an album which is going to be, say, a little bit different. So I decided just to make a little bit step to the past, to this, and to smuggle a little more classical metal vibes on the album, make it a little bit more different. And that was a failure.
Yeah.
And I came back on the proper trail, like, soon after that. And I never do the same. I just follow my feelings because this, I'm not the guy who wants to satisfy like old fans. It's not possible.
Right.
Vader. We follow a path we chose years ago, and we develop that. We just we give some emotions. So we actually record the albums, and every next album is just some new songs we record to play them live. That's the priority for us. And that's what I can say. Like the favorite, not favorite. It's not us who decide. Fans decide.
Right.
And I'm glad that Vader is not the band that recorded 1 or 2 albums that are just liked but fans, but the rest is just like some add-ins. Sometimes there's huge war between like I like this better than that, but actually, even The Beast got some fans, because of that crap sound and all that, just like difference. For many of those, they like it just because it's different.
Right.
That's how it is.
I was listening to it on the way here.
I don't really like that attitude, but this is how it is. And I'm so glad that we recorded albums which still. These albums, they still keep the Vader spirit, but they are different, and fans can feel it, and I don't need just everybody. Like, it's like you try to explain like why AC/DC or Motorhead they sound the same because they are Motorhead and they are AC/DC.
Right.
I don't expect. I would never expect to hear AC/DC sounding like Nirvana,
right?
Just to have more sold albums.
Success, yeah, right.
And and that's why they have respect from fans for that because they're not doing that just for more albums to sold something.
Yeah.
Even if they in a different level, of course, like this different world, but whatever. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, yes. Totally.
Well, I'm curious now that you're about a week or so, well, at least at the time of recording this interview, into the latest album, Solitude and Madness. First time I read that title, I'm thinking like, I wonder if somebody's going to be like, wow, Vader kind of predicted it, because it's like, man, that's right in tune for literally. We're in Solitude, and I'm sure some people are going mad. Like, has anybody kind of been like, when did you come up with this album title? or nobody made that connection until today?
First of all, Solitude is not the same isolation.
Right. True.
It's not the same word. First, but second, like when I choose that line from the song Bones, for the title, that was far before the pandemic hit the world, so it's really hard to say like, so we're like prophets or something. No, it's just a coincidence, like happened, like nobody expected that bad, situation. But it happened, and we have to deal with that. And I just strongly believe, because for me and for Vader, living without going on tour is.
I think we could thank the internet.
That's why I'm trying just to explain to everybody that this isolation thing, it's the only way to get back on our proper life, and get back into hit the road again. And because that's the only way, the only solution, like how we can just kill the virus. Like we have to isolate the virus, actually, not us, the virus. To isolate the virus, that's why we call it isolation, to kill it, and I can't wait. Like actually we still planning, because we don't know how the situation is going to be like sooner, but we have to plan something in front.
Right.
And so I strongly believe that we can start like we plan now, and the information is going to be on our site in a few days in September. So if situation will be better, so we start to play probably smaller shows in September, already with new album. And we plan also to hit the US again in the beginning of next year in January. So cool. I really hope that nothing will change, and we can just inform about that tour as soon as possible.
Yeah, we hope so as well.
I agree, because that would be a wonderful way to catch up then, because this has definitely been a pleasure having you here. I mean...
Did you want to give him that Desert Island question? The
Desert Island question?
Yeah.
What the hell is the desert?
What else is he bringing with him?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a nice way to wrap. So if you're on a desert island, please, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're on a desert island.
Please.
Please don't ask this.
Me no understand. Me no understand.
It's an on the spot.
No, sorry. It's that game with like you're alone and you do one album you can choose.
Yep.
Nah, it's not fair.
He asked it, not me. He did it twice to you.
I got too many favorites. So I really like to leave all of them.
Yeah.
And just to sing in my own.
Screw the island.
One and then said like, I could take the other one.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, how about I don't go to the island?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Stay here.
Oh, yeah.
Be better option, but yeah, definitely. Hopefully, it seems like Cleveland doesn't usually get avoided by Vader. So if you're coming through Cleveland here in September or whenever you can be back in the States, definitely will be. Well, you'll be seeing my friendly face.
I'll be there.
Maybe it'll be not so friendly. I don't know, but but I really appreciate you taking the time coming on the show, and we really did dive deep, and I really had this instance. I mean, quarantine's been good to me. I got to nerd out with Vader, so this has definitely been something awesome to go with this long format interviews that we've been doing. So hey, if you're one of these people that are watching this and you're like, what other long interviews are you talking about? Well, we're here on YouTube and you can find them. So Into the Darkness podcast, we're doing these weekly. And there's plenty of things to be had here on the Reaper Metal channel, as well as the Reaper Metal brand, reapermetalproductions.com, Redefining Darkness Records, Vader, all this great music, all this stuff to get through, whether it be quarantine, any day of the week. So if that's all stuff of interest to you, well, then you got to do that fun YouTube stuff, subscribe, share, like, all that crap, because when you do that, we'll have everything we need to talk to you next time.